Hello YouTube, welcome back to Kind Heart Homestead. My name is Ben and I'm standing right outside of our solar shed project. You can see here, the outside is pretty complete, but I still have this big open trench that I need to deal with before I can have any more vehicles, deliveries, equipment brought out here to the property. So I'm going to start that today, and I'm going to prioritize the critical areas that we would most likely need to drive over first. If this trench stays open a bit longer term, that's fine. I'm sure the rain and the wind and the weather conditions for the rest of the winter and spring will gradually fill up the trench. But as you can see here, I bought a roll of blue 3/4 inch PEX. It's a 100-foot roll. PEX is not very expensive, but the reason I got this is because we realized that the only source of water outside would be from the garden. So I'm going to do an independent run so we can put a spigot coming out of the ground somewhere back there near the corner of the building. So I'm going to go ahead and thread this through from the inside and see if I can get this put into place. I have some scrap pieces of foam right here that I'm going to bury. For one reason, my conduit sleeves here are the most shallow spot in the whole trench. So to keep it frost free, I'm relying on the styrofoam to try to help. But also, when I need to dig this back up to run the main to the house, this will be a good indicator. So when I hit this with a shovel, this can get nicked up as much as it needs to, but at least I won't be hitting the actual water lines with a shovel. probably been over 6 months since I purchased all of my well supplies from the H2o Mechanic. I recommend you check out his channel if you plan to do anything DIY related to your own well pump or pressure tank. Even if you just want to know how that stuff works and you don't plan to do it yourself, I recommend checking him out simply to understand how easy some solutions could be to fix it yourself instead of calling out a plumber, especially if it's a critical time frame such as a car accident, a car coming onto a property, taking out some of your equipment, or maybe there's a freeze and some of your stuff cracks. You should just know how it works. Anyway, he sold me this pool shock, and based on the specs of my well, he told me to use half of it. So that's what I did. I'll keep the other half, I guess, for the future in case I ever need to do this again. However, I need to completely pump all of this back out of the well before I get my sample analyzed to finish the permitting process by the state. Because if they detect any contamination, which would be this, or anything that I kind of add through unsanitary practices dealing with the sample container, I would fail the test. So basically what I need to do is make sure that when I finally do run the water to get to the sample, all that's there is just the pure water from the ground with nothing added. So I'm done with this. Next time I get out the generator, I can pump all that water out. But for now, this is just gonna sit in the water and do its job sanitizing the well. going to turn out to be a short trip because I made so much progress on filling these trenches yesterday. I'm comfortable only working the morning and then heading back to South Carolina after lunch. So 2 things that I'd like to work on is find out where I'm going to mount the condenser unit for the mini split. I bought one of those fancy wall mount racks where it's like 2 arms come out and then the box mounts on top of those. So I need to find out where the studs are on my wall. It would have been very easy to find before I put the metal on because I would have been able to see my big rows of nails. But since the metal is up, what I had to do was I went inside and I measured from the part of the window that I could see from the inside and the outside and took all my measurements. They're 16 inches on center, so it's not very difficult to transfer. I just need to make sure that I'm measuring from the same part of the window that I measured from inside. Maybe if I have time after I do this, I can actually mount the condenser, but I also need to do some stuff with the gas line. So I hope you enjoy this time lapse. Well, you might be wondering what all this painter's tape is about. I have a tick mark drawn every 16 inches, which represents the center of each stud. But this piece of tape represents the farthest distance that the flexible conduit can reach. So these studs might be ideal to attach this to the right side of that unit. I have some tape down here to transfer those lines down, but there's a bit of a dilemma that I ran into. Let me explain. The intent of this design is to have a track going horizontally. This is similar to a lot of closet shelving systems. That way, only this needs to be secured to the studs. It spans the load across them like a header, and then these L brackets hang from there. That doesn't work with vertical siding, and I'm trying to figure out a way to not use that. So I thought about bolting these directly to the studs, and it's very close to working. The problem is the feet on the mini split condenser, the bolt holes are spaced 17.5 inches instead of 16. So it's very close. If I was to get a structural screw in the edge of these 2 studs, it could work, but I'm reluctant to try to angle something in from the edge corner. So one idea I had was to try to cut strips of this where I could potentially put a bolt through these holes, and then all I would need is an inch of play back and forth to get these to hang. But this is very thick metal. I don't know if I have any tools that can cut this. And also, I don't know if a stud is wide enough to fit 2 bolts into the stud. That's the only way to prevent this channel from teeter-tottering using the screw as a pivot point. So I have some thinking to do. I guess we'll find out what I end up deciding on. So I ended up buying these bushings. I have no idea what these are supposed to be used for, but I bought the appropriate diameter lag bolts so that these don't move around too much. And what that's going to do is allow me to bring out the screwing surface flush with the outer end of this rib. These ribs are not structural. If I was to put a lag bolt through this and tighten it, it would completely crush it like a tin can. So here's the whole assembly. And as you can see, this top piece was manufactured long on purpose. So it can fit across 3 studs, 16 inches on center. So I'm actually going to use 3 of those bushing lag screw assemblies, and then I can slide these other 2 to be exactly the width that I need for the mounting points on the mini split. I bought this flexible gas line. The piping itself is just like PEX, and it's very cheap. It's the fittings that get expensive. Let me show you the fittings I got. I have this coupler, and I can only attach this soft PEX to more of that PEX material. It has these inserts that go into the PEX to make it more rigid. And this can only be used underground, can't be used in and under any buildings. So the only way to adapt it is to buy these very expensive adapters that convert the PEX to metal, and then it's 3/4 inch threaded metal pipe. So these are the risers that will bring it up the wall, and I'm gonna have to drill a hole through the siding to send black iron pipe through. And I've installed gas pipe before in my last property, so I have no problem doing that. But this is my first time dealing with this PEX material, so I want to go ahead and do a test run before I start getting down into the trench. So it says the first step is to shove these things in. The instructions say to put this peg in by hand or use a mallet. So here's a rubber mallet. One stiffener in. That one was a lot easier. All right, it says to expose 3 threads and then mark the depth with a Sharpie. Now the last step is to use 2 channel locks to tighten the nut till it touches the body of the flange. It says not to over tighten. I also bought an actual terminating cap for 3/4 inch pipe because I don't trust these little plastic things. They might crack in the sun. So to keep any sediment out of here, I'm gonna go ahead and put this on. All right, let's move this over to the trench. All right. Well, a day of digging has gone by. I'm very pleased. Let me walk you through my progress, west to east, starting at the garden. We have our 40 by 50 foot silage tarp here, which has been a struggle to keep down because of how much wind we have up on the mountain here. But anyway, right at the corner of the garden, we have our 3/4 inch PEX. It shows white. It's all the same price, it doesn't really matter. And then a 12-2 wire. That goes about 80 feet over to where the conduit sleeves come up through the slab into the utility room. But before I filled this trench, we had the idea to throw another piece of PEX in here. It's actually hidden in this little sleeve, just to keep it from deteriorating in the sun. This is 3/4 inch PEX again, but chose blue this time. This is a much shorter run, probably about 20 feet. It all shares the same trench. And then it goes over here, just next to the new mini split, which is going to keep this entire building heated in the winter so the batteries do not freeze, and then cool in the summer. But all the conduit sleeves are down there near that ground rod. I use 2 of them. One of them for the well pipe and well electrical, and then the other one for the 2 PEX lines and the garden electrical. That leaves 1 available for a house. So this trench, I kept these pipes in there, so in case any inspector wants to make sure that the trench is sufficiently below the frost line, they could just put their tape measure down there. But at the end is the well, and I need to attach the fittings up there after I drain all of the pool shock out of the well. Next, I'll bring you around back to the east side of the building. I saved these trenches for last because on this side, it's not in the way of anything. We don't drive over here. We don't work or store anything over here. So I can finish filling this later. But you can see on both ends of this trench, I have these metal risers popping out. That's what converts that yellow PEX to the male pipe thread, 3/4 inch. So that end will go through the wall. The other end here, I'll have to build something to house the propane tanks. And then over here, sharing most of the same trench, is the conduit for the PV array. That white is not the conduit. It's just scrap PVC pipe to keep the conduit clean and keep the dirt and sediment out of it. You can see down in the trench, it's sufficiently deep. Hopefully all of this is good and to code, but I need to get out of here now because I need to get back to celebrate Easter with my family. So I will see you guys here next time. Kind Heart Homestead. Bye.